Welcome, fellow ride stormers. You are officially storming this hypnotic ride, and what a ride it is. Oh, yes. Whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know? These are days of victory. This is episode 87 of Brain Software with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. We are triumphantly back in Toronto from Hypnothoughts Live in Las Vegas.
Ladies and gentlemen,
we're preparing to bring the hypnotic storm to London, England, and the UK Hypnosis Convention. And starting today, we're going to be bringing more world-class hypnotists onto our podcast.
Right on. We'll start with a good one.
It's showtime.
Showtime. Get the eye drops in.
All right, Mike.
You know, Chris, that was so crap. I think we should let's edit the whole thing out.
Yeah, or let's just say that we're going to edit it out and not. And continue.
Like we always have.
Okay. Yeah. So welcome back, folks. We are really excited to be bringing a guest onto this podcast who I'll introduce in a moment. But before we do, I have a few things to quickly mention. The first is that our November Architecture of Hypnosis class in Toronto is now officially sold out. So that's the bad news. But the good news is we have opened registration for May 2018. 5 awesome days in Toronto in the spring, learning hypnosis with Mike and myself. The dates are May 14th through May 18th, and you can find out all the details at mikemandelhypnosis.com/class. Come and study with us in Toronto. Also want to let you know that we are heading to the UK. Carl Smith, our friend from the UK Hypnosis Academy, is hosting us for a 2-day master class, Monday and Tuesday, November 6th and 7th in Suffolk, UK. And you can get all the details on that at mikemandelhypnosis.com/UK. Now, that's a Monday, Tuesday. The weekend before that, which is the 4th and 5th of November, we're going to be at the UK Hypnosis Convention, which you can find out details at through ukhypnosisconvention.co.uk. Check it out. You will love the UK Hypnosis Convention, which is Europe's biggest hypnosis conference. And now, Mike, let's bring on our guest. This is a man who's a very good friend of ours. He's an exceptional hypnotist and a hypnosis trainer of fine form. He is the go-to guy for learning how to market a hypnosis practice. He's also the host of the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, and he's one of the most engaging public speakers we've ever heard. This guy's worth paying close attention to, folks. Please welcome Jason Linett.
Hey there.
Hey, great to have you on the podcast, Jason. So you have hosted both Mike and I separately before on your Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, and we've been meaning for quite a long time to have you on. We had some scheduling issues because Mike's car broke down, but he did not die in a fiery crash. He is here. We are live. We are recording, and it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
He did not take the warning the first time, and now here we are once again.
Here we are
let's have some fun.
Excellent. So we are just super excited. Jason, before we dive into the questions that we have for you that we want our Brain Software podcast audience to listen to, how about you tell us a little about yourself? Like, what do you do, and how did you get involved in hypnosis?
Yeah, my story getting into hypnosis is rather similar to a lot of other people, with a small change to the end of the story, which was that there I was in college, and someone came to my school and during the welcome week did a stage hypnosis show. And I'm watching it, and at the time I was in school to become management in the arts, so working specifically behind the scenes in theater. And what was cool about this experience was that the hypnotist didn't realize he pulled up a bunch of acting majors, which usually should help a show, but most of the audience is now watching and going, they're all actors, this isn't real. And I'm watching it, and these are my friends who respectfully are not that great of actors and are no longer actors, so I can
that tells you something.
And I'm watching, it's like, wow, they're really genuine. Wow, this is incredible. So it was that split reality that didn't have a great audience because of the nature of his volunteers, but I'm watching an absolute amazement as, wow, this is real. So that is what spurred a whole sort of quest of personal education, so reading books, watching videos, and then over time just taking as much live training as I possibly can, and here I am today.
Okay, that is phenomenal, because that is exactly how I got started being interested in hypnosis. It was actually Mike performing at Carleton University.
90s, right?
Yeah, I think I saw you perform in 1992, Carleton University. I was a first-year engineering student, and I thought the same thing. Now, I didn't have friends that were actors up on stage, but I had a similar experience where I watched these people and said, there's no way they could be acting that well. This is real.
Well, because they were engineers. They weren't acting students, right?
It was not just the engineering students. It was the entire Frosh Week. So thousands of first-year university students. And yeah, that was what got me interested as well, just seeing a stage show. We'll edit that out.
Switching now.
Which is what I think really helpful, though, starting off with that phenomenon, starting off with that perspective where things are happening that are different than what's normal.
Right.
And in many ways, I mean, whether it's the client coming into the office or even a person volunteering for a show, just that alternate reality that things can play out a different way than they were before, I think that's massively important to the process of hypnosis, just to get that change in motion, just to get that process in action.
Yeah, completely agree. So you started with an interest in the entertainment aspect of hypnosis. Did it stay that way for a long time, or did you very quickly discover there were all sorts of uses for hypnosis?
Yeah, my initial story was, again, buying a massive box of stuff on eBay, which I'm assuming was some sort of estate sale. And the story goes that I'm watching it all thinking, this is going to teach me stage hypnosis, and yet it's all hypnotherapy. And watching every bit of it with the mindset of, this isn't what I want, let me watch the next one. So over time, it was a little bit of both. I was there back in 2008 in my certification training with Sean Michael Andrews, and he tells the story that first day of class, we're all actually watching videos of Jason Linett's recent television appearance, because at the time I was working predominantly already as a stage hypnotist. So it was just initially the idea that, hey, I'm home around town Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Let me open up an office and start seeing some clients part-time. And just over time, the hypnotherapy side of things completely took over.
It just took over, yeah.
That's the bulk of what I do.
Now, that's interesting, because that box of stuff you bought on eBay, I think I sold you that.
Yeah, whoever it was just really took advantage of me on the shipping.
Just clearing out the stuff out of my attic.
Oh, that is too funny.
That's fantastic. And what people probably don't realize is the immense overlap between stage hypnosis and therapy, insofar as a stage hypnotist has to, if he or she is going to be any good, has to very quickly learn some rapid induction sets, because it can't be boring. And that will map across very well into therapy, provided one is not stuck doing these horrendous progressive muscle relaxation boring inductions.
Yeah, totally agree.
Although I'd share the anecdote that over the years, the concern at the beginning was, do I hide one thing from the other market? So do I let my hypnotherapy people know that I also do stage hypnosis? Do I let my stage hypnosis people know that I do hypnotherapy? And really it was a real don't run when you're not being chased moment, because over the years, I think only 2 people ever have commented on, hey, I found your stage hypnosis stuff online. And it's just simply that frame that, imagine the skill it takes to deeply hypnotize and work with a committee of about 20 people. Right. So when it's just you and me in the office,
it's way easier.
That's the story themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because what I found when I was doing therapy in the 90s, a lot of people had come in because they had seen me or someone else do a hypnosis show. And what I was always hearing was, well, I'm not going to quack like a duck, am I? Well, no. Well, I saw in a hypnosis, having to educate people that context is everything in hypnosis.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. So when did you start doing stage hypnosis then? Were you freshly out of college? Were you working in the theater industry at that point, or had you already...
At the time I was working in management and theater. So specifically, I was a stage manager. I was a member of Actors Equity Association, which manages both actors as well as stage managers. And to predate the entire story, there was always an interest in all things magic and mentalism. And really, I think it was this intention that I was becoming more and more of a purist, that if I could really do magic, why would I carry around a pack of cards? If I could really read your mind, why would I go through the hoops of making you write it down first? So I was looking for something more organic, and that's where a friend of mine was also nudging me in the direction of going, you should look at this hypnosis thing. So it was an easy transition to then add in hypnosis to the magic act that I was performing. I mean, I was paying my way through college the first couple of years working theme parks, doing a magic show. But again, that mindset of let's peel away the props, let's peel away the extra stuff, and just get to the point of creating these effects in the mind.
Right. No, Jason, I totally relate to that because Chris and a lot of our listeners know in the 1970s, 1978, I had a huge stage show that was built in Las Vegas, and the pyrotechnics were done by Linett, who did them for Rush and for Kiss.
I thought you were going to say a lunatic.
Well, yeah. I'd take people on this trip into outer space with this whole thing. It would take like 3 hours to set it up with a road crew of 3 and, an hour and a half teardown. And I hated it after a while because it scripted me and forced me into this enormous thing. And I, like you, preferred to just the purity of having virtually no props, nothing, just a guy up there and weird things happen. But when you were doing your mentalism stuff and your magic, did you do any blindfold work back then?
I did, yes.
Yeah, me too. And I heard a wonderful line from Corinda's book, and any mentalist out there will totally get this. Kid says to his mom, "Mommy, what's that man doing?" And she says, "He's putting a blindfold on, dear." "Why is he doing that, Mommy?" "So he can tell us what he's looking at."
Oh, that is clever.
Although you may appreciate, just recently out in Las Vegas, I taught a 2-day course called Hypnotic Products, which was all about producing and creating digital products and building that passive income machine. And in the middle of the course, suddenly now I'm pulling out Daryl Fitzke and his 19 classifications of magical effects that you can do a levitation, you can do a flotation, you can do a disappearance, you can do an appearance, and then switching that over to the hypnotic dialogue to really break apart, okay, now here are our categories for change. So from that mindset of adding the appropriate texture, the appropriate compounding to the hypnotic experience, okay, I've been hitting this issue literally. Let me now go after it in a metaphorical nature. Now let me go after a more cathartic style of change. Now let me do a practitioner-driven intervention. Let's now do a client-driven intervention, but compartmentalizing all these different strategies so we can logically change that structure of the session to better go in and help that person navigate towards that outcome.
Excellent.
That's fantastic, Jason. You sound
this
like
is what we call, by the way, nerding out.
I hear you more as a special forces hypnotist. And that's just such a remarkable way of addressing the session. I think that's fantastic.
Well, maybe that would be his new nickname then. Jason, Special Forces Linett.
Fantastic.
That is fantastic. By the way, I would love to let me take the opportunity here to plug your work, because WorkSmartHypnosis.com is an excellent, excellent resource for hypnotists, especially those who are new to the field of hypnosis and not so skilled at marketing. Because one of the things about Jason is that he only teaches stuff that he has actually put into practice in his own business. Right. So he has, what do you describe yourself as? The hypnotic guinea pig, right?
Yeah, the hypnosis business guinea pig, that I won't teach things that I haven't personally done myself. So it's where years ago I attended a workshop where a hypnotist was teaching a marketing strategy that, by way of a simple follow-up question, I found out this person had not actually done the thing that they were teaching. So respectfully, though perhaps disrespectfully, that's a place where I stopped listening to a lot of hypnotists talk about their business. And instead, I was going out and tracking what are the multimillionaire info marketers doing? What are people who are really changing the language of how we connect with our audience? What are they doing? So how do I learn that for myself, test it, come up with my own strategies along the way too, and then impart that to this community that really, really needs that boost in terms of how they think about their business.
And then mapping it across into hypnosis. That's amazing. Now, a question for you, if I can just interject here, Chris, is Jason, with your background in theater and working in theater, being trained in theater, how much of that figures into your client work? Like, do you make it make it a not theatrical, but you're drawing from those resources when you're working with a client. Is that correct?
It is. And it's where I'd hear Scott Sandlin talk about having soft skills. So things that you've done from previous experiences, things you've done in other careers will definitely fold into it. So admittedly, I was the wizard behind the curtain for most of the theater career. So I wasn't acting, I wasn't directing, I wasn't designing. It was my job to make all those creative people get along. And at the same time, for all these incredible things that would be happening on stage, this would all be documented in this wonderful 30-page Excel document. So to think about things in a systematic nature, to always work from the mindset, part of the job of the stage manager was to build the book, what was eventually deemed the Bible of the show, that the premise was if the stage manager got hit by a bus, another stage manager could swoop in and call the show just as well because of that book. So every lighting cue, every sound cue, every actor entrance. So that ability to take that step back and change that perceptual position and become aware of all the individual ingredients that have to occur. What has to happen before this piece of scenery flies in? What has to happen before this scene change can occur? The same way that as you're working with a client, they're coming in most cases just based on the symptom. They want to quit smoking. They want to lose weight. They want to get rid of some specific fear. And that's really just this one component of a much, much bigger story. So from that theatrical element, being able to acknowledge that it's the entire story, that in really well done literature, there's not a single wasted word. Every word is there for a reason. Yet at the same time, there is that element of the performance of it because, again, we are creating that experience. We can do hypnosis, though I'd also point out there's times where we need to be hypnotic in our process of bringing the mind to that place where, again, other things can occur that are outside of what's normal, because what's normal for them as of now is not working. And through that theatrical experience of creating that hypnotic state and going through the experience, folding in phenomenon and all this stuff happening, it's where my paraphrase at times is that we're helping to break the old already broken reality and establish that better change moving forward, that better reality moving forward.
Yeah, getting people out of the trance they're in before you create a new trance for them.
Exactly.
Transformation. Okay, I want to back up for a moment here because you mentioned the marketing stuff, and Mike correctly pointed out, of course, that you were taking stuff from one field, marketing info products, and mapping it across into the field of hypnosis. So essentially teaching hypnotists how to do this other thing that other people were expert at. And in much the same way, our podcast kind of works in reverse in that we teach hypnotic principles for people to map across into other areas of their life, whatever that be, maybe it be their career, their relationship. And a lot of people, as a result, become fascinated with hypnosis, and they come to our products or their training and they learn this stuff, and they maybe change careers or maybe not. But it's really cool, the idea of mapping things across in that way. And so I wanted to ask you, how did you originally become such a great public speaker? We have been to many of your live teachings at HypnoThoughts Live or watched you do videos, etc. And obviously you've brought great public speaking to your hypnosis training and your marketing training. But where did you get that skill set from in the first place?
Well, the first thing is, of course, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was about to pretend I didn't hear you and make you ask for that again just to get more, but let's move on here. No, I'd share that, and I think this is a dialogue the three of us had together just recently, that a favorite movie of mine, let's answer by way of a metaphor first. The favorite movie of mine is Waiting for Guffman. And it's a movie directed by Christopher Guest. It's in the same style as Spinal Tap and Best in Show and all these movies that they begin with a rough outline, and then most of the movie is improvisational in nature, and the story goes that they'd often film upwards of 150 hours of content to then edit it tightly down to 100 minutes for the movie. And Waiting for Guffman is a movie that proves you really need exceptional actors to play bad actors in this movie. So it's Christopher Guest, it's Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy, Fred Willard, just an incredible cast. And there's a scene with Eugene Levy, who plays a dentist. And the whole story of this movie is that it's these people who think that they're doing this incredible performance and it's going to hit Broadway when, of course, they're terrible. And hilarity ensues. So there's the scene with Eugene Levy talking about how, people ask me if I was a dentist. People ask me if I was the class clown growing up. And no, I wasn't. But I sat next to him and I studied him. So it's where to be in the room, and the phrase was in that community, well, that's a choice. Was the polite way of thinking to yourself, oh my God, that's horrible. So to observe the staging of something, to observe the timing of something, it's the same way that to be in any workshop, and I say this is not just a statement about the hypnosis profession, it's true of most other professions out there, any bit of education, that it's unfortunate that sometimes the measure of good instruction, good teaching, is how much they actually deliver the content that they're there to deliver, rather than waste their time talking about what they don't have time to deliver. Mm-hmm. So again, it comes back to that theatrical mindset that every scene has a reason, every story, every line has its purpose. So to start with the end in mind, what is the experience that people need to learn from this? What is the takeaway that they need to have? What is also that emotional state that has to be there? And it's not just the bullet points, I've got to teach this, and that. It comes down to, again, providing that experience that gets people to a place where that not only can they learn it, but they also enjoy the experience and actually integrate what's there. I mean, it's the simple nature of, again, being an avid student myself. My favorite piece of feedback I actually received, I think it was HypnoThoughts 2 years ago. Someone's comment was, "I've never seen someone do a PowerPoint presentation and not look at the screen." Yeah. And my response was, well, yeah. If I was just going to read it there with you, why didn't I just sit down in the audience? And it's a simple mechanism as I've got to go there just to say, rehearse what you're going to present. Think about the entire experience. It's where the nature of, I've got hundreds and hundreds of hours of video content out there, and the way that the actor would review their performance, the way that the director would come back and watch the presentation. It was the way that a stage hypnotist years ago said to me, one of the worst things you can do after your program when you're driving home is just listen to the radio. Where instead I would record the audio of my stage hypnosis show, and there I am driving home and listening to the presentation thinking, how do I do this better? So it's that mindset of, again, you've got to draw in that audience. And it's also where, I mean, even on the sales and marketing side of things, sales gets a bad rap because so many people do it badly. They stand up and they just say, here's my little widget, who wants to buy it? As opposed to, you have to draw that audience in. You've got to build that relationship. You've got to demonstrate that value. And the phrase that I would use is that you have to earn the right to make that offer. So by understanding the sequencing of what's the information, and it's where that almost magician mindset that I still hold on to is that if I'm doing my job correctly in my presentations, whatever question you're about to ask me should actually be the next piece of content that logically we're going to move towards.
Right. So the sequencing is already set up in advance. You know, you're not up there flying by the seat of your pants. And Chris and I heard you present at HypnoThoughts Live, and it was a 2-hour session, and it just flew by. And for those of you who haven't seen Jason present, one of the keys is you are so congruent. You are so in touch with your material that you really, really made it fascinating. And I was waiting for that next point and your next line that would tie it together. So what do we say to people just starting out as speakers? What do we give them?
What I tend to say is map out the entire experience first. Consider to yourself, what are the takeaways? And I'm always looking for those little
Begin
nuggets.
with the end in mind, yeah.
Yeah, begin with the end in mind, but also along the way. It's where in marketing we can talk about writing for the short path and the long path, the hard offer or the soft offer. So an example of this would be that as I work with a high school doing a stage hypnosis program, as of now, I am not actively marketing my stage hypnosis, yet there are many schools that I go back to year after year after year. So here's the one that suddenly needs to change the date, change the time of their performance. And it's where I could be that prima donna and be really difficult about it, yet to realize that's a 10-year client of mine. Let's keep them happy. So that's for that long path, that long-term investment. We can talk about a hard offer or a soft offer in sales. Hard offer, pick up the phone and call me right now. Soft offer, click here to get access to this video series. So to look at, not everybody in your audience is going to go off and do everything that you've shared. They're just not going to. And it's just that not everyone has the same specific set of goals that you do. So it's where part of the audience is there exactly for that content, but there's also that element of highlighting, if you take away just one part of this presentation, here's the one thing to do. Mm-hmm. So to make sure that everybody's leaving better for the experience, whether they eventually become a customer, a client, a student of yours or not, it's to always be in that mindset of how do I create that impact? But yeah, you're exactly right. Start with that end in mind. yet again, map out the experience. There's an aspect of presentations that I've become really fond of as well, which is I draw them in first. Begin with a story. Begin with that almost Hollywood effect where you're watching the movie and the action is already in motion. And then only once they're drawn in, now officially, hi, I'm Jason Linett, and I'm here to speak about this. So it's, again, giving them that reason to care and continuously selling the content, even though clearly they're in front of you. They've already downloaded the podcast. They've already purchased the product. They've already signed up for the workshop. They're already sitting there in that convention seminar. Yet again, it's that mindset that we're always influencing. We're always selling. We're always guiding towards the next step. So we might as well do it really well the whole way through.
Might as well do it really well. That's great stuff. And I remember reading, Chris and I both read Cialdini's most recent work, Persuasion. And I have adopted one of his principles. I'm when I do a keynote, and I do quite a lot of
I know exactly where this is going.
Keynotes, yeah. What I do is I light up the neural pathways first. So I'll say to the group, we've all had those experiences where we find a key piece of information that can be extremely simple, but can radically transform our lives. I always give the example, it's like discovering the dictionary is in alphabetical order. And it's, I know zebras in here somewhere, and I say, we've all had those things. So people are going, yeah, I'm building a yes set because everybody has experienced that. And then I say, I've spent more than 40 years on the road discovering those things that can make a huge difference. And I want you to listen today with that in mind. Just take home one or two of those things that will radically transform your life. And boom, you get them riveted on what I'm saying. Then I do, as you said, make sure I deliver the goods though. And that's where I'm going next with it.
And then you give people options. So as Jason was talking about, for example, the hard sell versus the soft sell or offer, you're giving people flexibility of how they can execute what they learn from you. You're injecting humor into it, which is something both of you guys do tremendously well, because I think that lights up these peak states, right, of feeling great. So here you're going to get this distinction. The neural pathways open. You're feeling great. Boom, it gets anchored to you.
Good point.
Well, similar to that, too. It's, again, that opening framework that Mike gives. One of the ones that I often give is that so often in hypnosis or even other markets as well, there's this mindset of becoming the clone, becoming the copy, becoming the duplicate of it. And my entire intention is to hedge that off at the very start. That the phrase that I'd often use is that it's my job as your instructor in this moment to give you at times the insane level of thinking that I've put into every aspect of all that I do. So the goal is not for you to go off and become a clone of Jason Linett, but it's for you to at least understand the why.
Yeah, model your thinking at least.
Yeah, there's a little too much at times of just do it this way, that works, as opposed to have the real understanding of this is what that does. This is what that experience is, which back to the theatrical background, here's a moment where we're producing a Shakespearean play of some sorts, and it's that moment where the dramaturg, the historian, would be there to comment that given the structure of the play, this is what this scene is about. However, when the play was written, this was a satire of the monarchy of the day, and this is why the play was written. So there's that dual reality, the same way that, again, you're in session with the client, and they're here for this habit. They're here for this feeling they want to change, yet to encompass that entire structure of who is this person and what are they now shifting into that better version of, where that old issue just no longer is congruent.
Right.
So it's, again, entire experience all meshes together. It's these themes that in our hypnotic community, very often I'd meet that person who goes, oh, I'm not interested in that business stuff. Oh, it's nice that I've heard this one. Oh, it's nice that you have that hobby of working on your website. I'm more interested in helping my clients. And it's said perhaps a little bit more condescendingly than I just gave it. But it's that real discovery that we're always navigating towards an outcome. We're always moving towards a solution, whether it's the fact that they've finally thrown out those cigarettes and moved on, whether it's the fact that finally they can get in the car and drive on the highway without fear. It's a similar equation towards that place of here I am stuck inside of this challenge, and here I am now doing something about it to create that change. So it's where the navigation of the mind, whether it's creating the sale or making the change, it's a similar structure of thought, that we're always moving towards that positive outcome.
Always moving towards a positive outcome. And that's great. I'll back it up a second. What you said earlier about, you're not trying to get people to become a fully functioning clone of Jason Linett, but you're letting them get an insight into how you think and how you produce these things. And hopefully they can map that across. Here's a classic example of that I've shared with Chris. A friend of mine, I haven't seen him lately. He's an NLP trainer. And when he was doing his training, he got to give a keynote to a fairly large group of business people. And he had just returned from a Tony Robbins event, whereupon he cloned Tony's mannerisms, like everything. Like he wanted to be Tony Robbins more than anything. And he admitted that. He jumps up on the stage and is like, hey, how's everybody doing? These are all accountants and bankers. And he's just really in your face. And they're just looking at him totally deadpan. And there's no link at all. And he brilliantly stepped away from the podium and pointed back at it and just changed it with a spatial anchor and said, now, don't you hate that kind of speaker? And then he completely shifted gears and became totally
flexibility
laid back.
Of behavior.
Flexibility of behavior.
Right. I also, Jason, in listening to you for the last few minutes, it sounds like when you're working with people, for example, smoking cessation, whatever it is, you don't look to just change their behavior, but you're actually chunking it up and changing their identity. You're building them in the new identity that they really want. And then the behavior, of course, changes automatically. Is that accurate?
That is, and it's where over the years I'd often hear people say, oh, people come in with their problems and it really wears you down. I can't see but so many clients in a day because the stories that people bring in, it wears on you, which when I hear that, it's the mindset that they're connecting with the wrong aspect of the client. If you identify with their problem, that's where the both of you are going to stay. Mm-hmm. So no matter the issue that comes into my office, every client from my perspective is a good to great client. So here's where they are now. And it's where, again, yes, we have to go in and address the issue that they hired me to address. Yet as the process continues, the more it becomes around building that, I love the phrase of incongruence, letting that issue become so completely incongruent to where they are now that it just doesn't make sense anymore. So you work on changing the individual, changing that aspect, shifting into that more empowered identity where that old framework of living just doesn't fit anymore. Which in that mindset, it's where I'm a big fan of the phrase that we can do hypnosis or we can be hypnotic in nature. And there's a key difference in that of shifting that perspective of here's who I am now, here's what belongs. That as people organically produce change, that person who just one day wakes up and everything is different. We have that ability to rapidly shift. So moments where perhaps there was a shift in religious belief system, perhaps there was a shift in political belief system, perhaps there's the moment where someone was in a relationship and they discovered something and the relationship did not work anymore. We have that ability to rapidly make a transition. So it's where I'm looking at times to make that shift in that rapid state. And by doing so, support that identity, build up that confidence where it's no longer this game of what about this? What about that? What if I backslide? No, that stuff just doesn't fit anymore. And they're not going back to that old way. So it's changing on that level of identity is always where I'm aiming for, because then where we can teach techniques, we can teach supplementary strategies. But again, to get to that place where it just doesn't make sense anymore. It just no longer belongs. That's
right.
where I want that change process.
I've got to look at the show notes from past episodes and note to self as we're creating the show notes for this episode, I want to put a link in there to the podcast that we did where we discussed Dilt's logical levels, because that'll fit so nicely with anyone who's listening to this stuff and wants to learn more about it. Changing people at identity and the behavior will automatically change. It's a fantastic way of looking at people and therapy and self, others, whatever, relationships, etc. Now, let's do a little rapid fire because we got to wrap this up at a reasonable amount of time to keep our podcast. We like to keep them under about 45 minutes. And I want to have you talk a little bit about how you see new hypnotist, someone who's coming into the business, or anybody really, let's say somebody with an information skill, a people coaching skill, whatever it is. I've heard you say this before. You're a great hypnotist, or insert whatever, therapist, etc. You're a crappy website designer. So what's some really good advice that you could share with people, and feel free to plug your own website in terms of call to action here.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at our businesses, it's that mindset of harness what your specialty is. So to go to a fantastic book, E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, he talks about the different roles we would have as a business owner. We're the entrepreneur, we're the technician, we're the manager, and we juggle all these roles. And it's to take that moment and embrace what are you good at. So many people who are listening to this, I'm sure, have spent that time staring at a computer screen trying to figure out something on a website or a piece of software, and 5 hours later, it wasn't done. So this is where my business really took off, that learning that skill to duplicate myself. That again, back to that wizard behind the curtain mindset, it was only my responsibility to describe the user experience and then find the expert who could make it happen. So any bit of graphics you would ever see of mine, most of the videos you would see of mine, the websites that I have out there. So that ability to express to the expert, this is what I need. And I'd share there's always the mindset of, all this stuff works, you just have to do it. So I'd hear people immediately go, yeah, but I can't afford that. Yeah, but I don't know how to do that. So it's where inside of one of the programs that I have, Hypnotic Business Systems, which whether it's someone brand new in hypnosis looking at even finding their first office space and charging for sessions for the first time, or maybe it's that person who is already working a ton as a hypnotist and yet is stuck in that dollars for hours model, and they're stuck working in their business and not quite working on their business.
Exactly.
So inside of Hypnotic Business Systems, that's where I'm teaching everything from the ground up, as well as some of the really sexy things we can do nowadays online, where to think about things differently. Again, my favorite inspirational phrase is the catchphrase of nearly any infomercial at 4 a.m. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
So I could field all of these incoming consultative calls and spend all these hours on the phone for the percentage that eventually become paying clients. Or I can harness the fact that the world is a whole lot smaller, and regularly I will run a webinar for my Virginia hypnosis practice, talk about the things I would normally say to the client. At the end of it, here's the button, sign up. And nowadays, in a lot of my business, I'm only talking to the client once they're already a paying customer. So it's where I'm doing the entire digital brain dump of all the stuff that I've done inside of Hypnotic Business Systems. And the title of that presentation, that program, is really the mindset that I would impart to people, is to always be looking for that systematic nature. So when you're approaching any task in your business, ask yourself the question, how do I do this once? So the aspect, of course, of seeing clients, I have not yet outsourced that part of it to the Philippines. No.
Exactly. Well, and I also
seeing a full lot of clients, and during my little bit of a break, I'm chatting with you guys and your audience. So these are the things that I enjoy doing, and that's where I pour my time. That's where I pour my focus. And for everything else, I'm looking for that systematic nature that, okay, we need to launch a webinar. Here's my series of emails. I just need to change the titles. Yep. Okay, here's an opportunity to run a print advertisement in the local area. And yes, that does still work if you have the right strategies. And here are my systems that I can run to make that work. So it's, again, looking for that systematic nature of things. So teaching the right principles, teaching the right strategies, and along the way, sharing, here's the crap I wasted tens of thousands of dollars on that didn't work, and now you don't have to do the same.
Exactly. Okay, so where can people go to learn more about Hypnotic Business Systems?
Yeah, really easy. If you head to just simply hypnoticbusinesssystems.com, it's not just a product, it's also a community. So we add content to it on a regular basis. There's a brand new module just on Facebook marketing that we just added to. Just head over to hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. And if you plug in the promo code MMH, for Mike Mandel Hypnosis, that'll knock 10% off the membership of that, whether it's monthly or annually. 10% will knock that off. On the other side of things, also my hypnosis trainings are over at hypnoticworkers.com. And again, that same promo code applies. We don't need any more scripts as hypnotists.
Thank you.
What we need
yes.
transcripts.
Agree.
So to begin, again, the mindset of let me give you the insane level of thinking behind what I do, by signed waivers, I am now sharing real client sessions with my audiences where all the words have been transcribed to model and track. Okay, this is what popped up during the intake interview, and this is why we went that direction in this session. So whether it's hypnoticworkers.com or hypnoticbusinesssystems.com, again, promo code MMH will knock 10% off those on a regular basis.
Folks, Jason's stuff is phenomenal.
First rate, yeah.
Get good training, whether it be from us or other great trainers, and we're only bringing on people onto this podcast who we consider to be great trainers. Jason's absolutely one of the best out there.
And of course, we do have to mention the very best hypnosis podcast in the industry with one host.
Right. And that would be...
which is Work Smart Hypnosis, available on every podcasting medium, or just simply worksmarthypnosis.com.
Fantastic. Well, it was fantastic to have you on here to talk all about the business aspect of hypnosis, how you got into hypnosis, how you moved from stage hypnosis to therapy, how you got involved in the marketing side and the education. And thanks so much for sharing all the details about how you went from the very beginning to becoming such a fluid speaker, using a lot of personal stories and just driving conversationally, hypnotically the message home.
And the real take home for me, Jason, having spoken with you many, many times, is how it takes a really good actor to play a bad actor.
Wait a minute. But then again, there's also always the side note to this conversation, guys. We help people.
Yes. Oh, I can't believe we didn't say that yet. We help people.
We help people.
So everybody should be helping others. And with that, I want to say thanks to Jason. And this has been Brain Software, episode 87 with Mike Mandel. And I'm Chris Thompson. And our guest has been Jason Linett from WorkSmartHypnosis.com, HypnoticBusinessSystems.com, and HypnoticWorkers.com. I got that right, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Excellent. And
thanks a lot, guys.
And good night. And just before we wrap up, I'd like to mention again that Mike and I are going to be in the UK at the UK Hypnosis Convention. That is ukhypnosisconvention.co.uk, or check out the training we're going to be doing in Suffolk right after the convention, and that's November 6th and 7th. Visit MikeMandelHypnosis.com/UK for more details.
Mr. Thompson, I ever tell you the most wonderful story about the bingo game in King for a Day?
No, you haven't.
It was about 1913, and the chaps were... it must have been later than that, because the war was 1915. Well, the chaps were sitting around, and we thought we'd raise a bit of money and give it for buying some wine from the Frenchmen who were local, sitting in the trenches all day. And Bryce Morgan, he came up with this idea. We were all sitting there. There was Guy Billingham was there, Ray Houston, the usual chaps. The Johnnies were there, Johnny Bortman, Johnny Latham Yotswo, and Johnny Brookman, Ding T. Larciar. And they said, well, why don't we have a bingo game, sixpence a card, and the money will go to buy wine for the troops. And let's have another prize. And Peter Fitzwadsworth Smythe, this remarkable idea, the commandant, he said, the winner gets to be king for a day, and he can be the commandant for the entire day up until midnight. Well, we arranged this. We sold quite a lot of cards and bought some wine. And Dennis Bryce Morgan, he said, well, let's go for a full card instead of the usual H or T or something in the pattern. And they spun the balls around. It was a funny thing. The first one that came out was B7. Bryce Morgan leaps up and he yells, bingo! He's on his first number. What? We looked at his card. The entire card was nothing but B7s. The cleverest chap. So he was king for a day. And he said, well, we've got a few rules. Brandy for everyone. That was a big hit. And he said, the second rule is coffee and tea with every meal, which was rather nice because it was Russian. But he had a rather unusual one for the third one. He said, the third rule is no more German rectal inclusions. And we all said, no, all right then. None of us had a clue what he was talking about. But it was wonderful, because at midnight he handed it all back to Peter Fitzwadsworth Smythe, and he must have come up with the right thing, because there were no German rectal inclusions after that moment. Cleverest chap.